Hello and welcome to All Have What They're Having, How to Create Earth-Shattering Customer Experiences in 2021, brought to you by Zoomin and Gainsight. My name is Megan Gilhooly. I'm VP of Customer Experience at Zoomin. Today, I have brought some amazing customer relationship experts just in time for Valentine's Day. For the next hour, we're going to discuss anything and everything related to customer love. Before we get to meeting our panelists, I have a few notes about our platform. First, this is a Zoom-in webinar, and unless you're a panelist, we can't see or hear you. So if you have dogs barking in the background, don't worry about it. It won't bother us. We are recording today's session, and we will send you a link via email after the session. Ask questions. I highly encourage you to ask questions of this amazing panel. You can do so using the Q&A function. Keep in mind your name will appear with your question. You can also upvote questions that other people are asking if you're really interested in one. We may answer some of the questions as we talk, but we'll leave time for sure at the end to really dive into your questions and give you some good answers. Please use the chat function to make general comments or to start conversations with the audience. And most importantly, by attending this panel discussion, you're automatically entered into a really fun contest. After the broadcast, we'll contact 50 lucky winners who will receive a Valentine's Day gift that they can have delivered to someone special. So hopefully you'll be one of those 50 lucky winners. All right, let's get into introducing these amazing panelists. So the first panelist, Kellie Capote, VP of Customer Success at Gainsight. Hey, Kellie.
Hey, how is everyone? Really excited to be here today. Customer success and love for customers with the theme of Valentine's Day is certainly front and center for me.
Awesome. And you're coming to us from Austin, right?
I am, Austin, Texas. Doesn't feel like Austin here today. It's a little bitter cold outside, but I am coming from the shiny state of Texas.
Beautiful. I'm coming from Denver and it's very cold here today, which is a little weird for Denver too. So one thing about I noticed about you, you kind of grew up at Gainsight, right? You started as a customer success manager and then kind of moved up through the ranks to VP. Really cool to see that kind of growth at one company.
Yeah, it's been a fast and furious journey. Lots of learning and fun along the way. And have been extremely fortunate to work with the customer success folks and organization that I have here at Gainsight. So excited to share some tidbits in terms of what's working and how we're thinking about customer experience.
Awesome. Very good. So Patrick, you're next. Patrick Quinlan, you've been with Citrix for, I think, 15 years, right?
Yep, 15 years. And my last day is on Friday. So
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Tell the news.
So
where are you heading?
On Monday, I'll be headed to Click, which is a data analytics company, and I will be leading their SaaS support team. So I'm very excited.
Congratulations. That's super cool. And you've spent, so I've known you for a number of years. And one thing I know, you've done almost everything as it relates to customer self-service programs, analytics, technical support. You've kind of done it all. So you've worn a lot of hats. So it'll be really interesting to hear all of your tidbits today. Thanks for joining.
Hopefully I've learned something useful that I can share. So I'm glad to be here.
I think you have. Yes, very good. All right. And last but not least, Brian Sharp, president of SafetyChain Software, entrepreneur, blogger, podcaster, do it all type of guy. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Dig the topic. I'd be remiss. Want to make my wife proud. Happy Valentine's Day to everybody.
Aww,
doing good, right? See that
so
you hooked me with that. I dig. I love it. So no, I'm excited to be here. I'm so excited to learn with the panelists here and have a little bit of a different perspective. So it should be fun.
Yeah, I have to tell everyone that I have fallen in love with your podcast, High Performance Happiness. It's such a different and cool podcast. I really recommend people check it out. So there were a couple that were just, I listened to a few and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. So
thank you. No, it's
really cool stuff.
Well, Kellie and Patrick have had these just amazing career arcs, and mine's been a little wonky. So as an entrepreneur building companies for 25 years, you got to do a lot of work between the ears. So it's just kind of my my public way of learning and getting better, kind of like what we're doing today about customer success and love. So glad to be here.
Awesome. Love it. Okay, so let's start out, and we're going to start with trust, because trust is the foundation of any successful relationship, whether at work or outside of work. What's the most important aspect to building a trusting relationship with customers? So Kellie, I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this question. So for me, it all begins with, being who you say you are. So at Gainsight specifically, if any of you on the line have worked with us, you know that we love and embody our values in every single thing we do. And I think way too often, those just become words on a page versus actually bringing those into life and bringing those into customer conversations. So interestingly enough, it's one of the very first slides that we include in our early conversations with prospects and customers, just to really set expectations in terms of what they can expect from us. And to most importantly, let them know that that partnership is going to be filled with authenticity. So, establishing that foundation for trust from day one through values and things like that is so critical to a long-term sustainable relationship.
Very nice. I love that. Authenticity. That's so, so, so important to building trust. Patrick, same question to you. What's the most important aspect to building trusting relationships with our customers?
Sure. Yeah, I think just building on what Kellie said, I think the other side of that coin from being authentic as the business is to make sure that you know the customer when they arrive, right? In a self-service context, understanding who they are, not asking them questions that you should already know, so that they trust that you have that relationship, that you care about them as a customer. And in a self-service context, that really helps to establish that you're a trusted source of information, that what you're providing is fit for what they're looking for. So I think it's really important to know who the customer is, greet them by name, and have an understanding of their needs when they come to your website.
Very nice. Love that. Definitely need to know the customer. That works well with. So basically, we have to be authentic. We have to be who we say we are as a brand, as people, as companies, and we have to know who our customers are. So Brian, adding on to that, what do you think about when you think about building a trusting relationship with customers?
Yeah, I promised you, Megan, I just wouldn't say what they said. Like, yeah, that. Both those are spot on. I dig it. For us, it's empathy. I think it's so easy to fall into the tactical trap where we're focused on fixing problems or doing the process. So it's not enough just to understand the problems you're solving and how to do that, but to really authentically care. I love how Kellie includes that in all of their work. So we're a mission critical app. So we have to remember our customers sometimes their careers are on the line with software they're putting in place or programs they're trying. They're taking a risk. They have hard days. They have kids. They have barking dogs. Remembering they're human, right? And being just really caring about them, I think is important and builds a lot of trust.
Yeah, I love that. The idea of authentically caring is so important. And in this digital world, it's extremely challenging, right? It's very difficult for us to show that we care through digital media. And so this makes building and maintaining trust significantly difficult today because of our remote world. Now, in order to kind of do that, we hear a lot about providing seamless experiences as a way to build trust. So how do we build seamless digital experiences exactly? Like, what makes an experience seamless? And how does that impact the trust that our customers have on this? Kellie, I know you talk about this a lot.
Yeah, this is something that's very top of mind, not only for my organization here at Gainsight, but probably one of the big themes that bubbles up to the top when I'm having conversations with customers. So when I think about seamless, I think the critical piece, like the backbone to all of that, is that seamless handoff from pre-sales to implementation, if that's relevant to your business, to post-sales. All of those customer-facing functions need to be operating, from the same sheet of music, so to speak. And that's often where we see these disjointed friction points show up from a customer experience perspective. So the framing that we like to use is this notion of operationalizing outcomes. And what that means, at the core of it is starting with really truly understanding the desired business outcomes of your customer. So that starts with sales. Why are they interested in using your software, technology, service? Getting very specific. That way you can bring that level of personalization and carry that common language from sales to here based on what they're trying to do. Let's go scope that set of 3 or 4 things, in which then it becomes more of a validation exercise if it's more of a high touch situation with the CSM team. Or from a digital perspective, you can still carry that same philosophy through, but you're using tailored messaging and content in app, in product, based on what we know that they're trying to do with your software or technology. So it starts with a common value framework is the way I like to think about it. And then we drive that personalization off of that from end to end across the customer journey.
Very nice. So to go back to what you were talking about with authenticity, it's kind of showing your authentic brand across the entire customer journey, right? And being very consistent about that.
Yeah.
So
and
Brian,
I think the listening piece is the critical part of it.
Yes, very nice. Brian, you're in manufacturing. So this kind of brings the idea of operationalizing outcomes to a whole new level. So how do you guys think about operationalizing outcomes?
Yeah, I love Kellie's response there, and I again with the risk of stealing from it, the outcome is where everything starts. We have a mantra here. We say the sales starts at the signature, right? In SaaS, it's exciting to do bookings and do all those things, and sales is high-fiving and ringing bells, and you're like, oh yeah, we have to make them happy, right? We have to execute. So I think that concept Kellie's talking about with the outcome being at the outset, right? And that's baked into the process. One of the keys, I think there's 2 pieces to it that I'd probably build on with what Kellie said. One is culture-based. CS is built into the DNA of the company. It's not a department, right? And I think one of the things we've done pretty well at SafetyChain is, and I haven't seen this executed well even in my past career, is our sales team is fully bought in on it. They love talking about customer success. It not just helps them close deals, but it makes references and referrals that much better. So they really authentically bought it, like they care about it. It's not just a checkbox or a slide. So culture is one piece, and then the ecosystem. Customers hate handoffs. They had, to Patrick's point earlier, you start asking them to repeat their story, their outcome, what's important 6 times through the journey, you lose that trust and credibility. So having that ecosystem, almost like a cloud that follows that customer, that's just surrounding them with the resources that are relevant to them and focused on what they bought your service or product for, is key.
Very nice. So you said you don't have a CS team. Does your sales team end up playing that role, or does everybody literally dive into CS?
Oh no, I thank you for clarifying, but they'd be really mad at me. No, absolutely. They're the center point of our business, our customer success team. But the way we talk about it internally is everybody, we all hear in SaaS, everyone's in sales. Well, guess what? Everyone's in customer success. And that's why we say the sales starts at the signature. So it's a big culture change, but it's been fun to watch it take hold.
Very nice.
My heart.
Thank you for I would have got in big trouble there.
Your CS team
would have been lighting up. So
I may have misheard. It's probably
that's okay. I appreciate
Kellie, you had something to add?
I was going to say, Brian and I were going to have a conversation afterwards if you didn't have that organization. So I'm happy to hear it's a company-wide mindset for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes. I love that. Very good. Okay. So one of the other things I think about when I think of trust is knowledge, because in this digital world, knowledge really is a lever to building trust. And so knowledge can be communicated through all kinds of methods: automation, chatbots, digitized contact centers, personalized content, you name it. But self-service capabilities really are paramount in this remote world. Patrick, as I said before, you've overseen self-service and have tested many different models of self-service. What are some of the best self-service models you've seen specifically for communicating product information or knowledge?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, I've been involved with and built some and experienced, of course, as a consumer, a lot of different models. And I think that the best models aim to reduce the effort for the customer, right? The customer may be using their product, but their goal is something related to their business, right? The outcomes that we talked about earlier. So how can you reduce the effort for the customer to achieve that outcome? And that might mean it will mean both on your digital side, on the website, so that you understand what the customer's goals are and you make it easy to accomplish, but also internally, right? And in the self-service model, not everything gets resolved self-service. Some of that stuff's going to come in to your support teams, and making sure those folks can solve that problem as easy as possible. They have the information about the customer, what the customer's tried already. They have knowledge available with potential solutions, and it's very easy for the customer and the support agent to interact with each other. So I think that going back again to that journey and the empathy and the authenticity, you got to know what the journey is. You got to know where the friction points are. You've got to talk to customers about those friction points and ask the tough questions so that you know where to focus efforts like automations. And chatbot's a great tool, but you've got to know where to point it, right? And it's got to be solving specific problems that customers are struggling with. So the best examples take all of that into account. They're not just throwing technology at the problem, but they're really coming with a holistic understanding of that customer's experience.
Very nice. And you've done that a lot at Citrix. So it sounds like you kind of know what will succeed. Can you tell us about any failures you had in this realm?
Lots and lots. I think that's part of the process. I'm trying to think of a specific example. I mean, we really struggled with, speaking of chatbots, with our solving technical problems with our chatbot. That was very difficult. Figuring out how to build the right conversation flows to really qualify the customer's question and get them the right answer. That's challenging. Another example, and again, going back to you got to talk to customers. We were confident we knew how to improve our search. And so we went and rolled out complicated search page with lots of facets that searched all across the company because we knew in our hearts that would be best, but we didn't talk to customers and they hated it. So making sure that you are engaging with customers, questioning your own assumptions, and validating those with the people that are going to use your product, super important.
Yeah, I totally agree. I love that, questioning your own assumptions. I actually have done a couple talks on disconfirming your own beliefs. I think it's so important that you're not actually going out trying to prove how successful you are. You actually want to go out and do research to disprove how successful you were. In other words, to prove that you failed so that you can fail fast and quickly and move on and
right.
Change course. So important. Love it. Kellie, you do some work with self-service. So what do you want to share about self-service?
Yeah, definitely. So first and foremost, I think there's two sides of this from my perspective. What you're referencing is we actually started our first, I like to call it digital-led customer success model at Gainsight last year for a specific product of ours that just naturally has a lower ACV, in which you have to think about, scalable models that are efficient but effective at the same time. And then B, this is probably one of the top trends or initiatives for all of our customers right now as they really lean into scalability and digital led. So it's something that's just front and center from both realms. So a few things I've learned and that we've tried. First and foremost, there's definitely an evolution happening where it's not just email. It's this omni-channel approach of what I call integrated journeys. Which can be email, really in-app in product is heating up. So that like bringing it directly to the user wherever they're at. And I think more importantly, the second component is making sure that it's personalized and specific based on the persona. So for example, what we may serve up, in-app to the end user may be different than the admin or an executive. So it all starts with onboarding, I think is the big first step in digital led, making sure that there's a clear checklist. Are they set up for success? And then very specifically leading them to that first value moment in the platform without overwhelming them with all the different things that they can be doing. So that's where that persona piece, and I think desired business outcomes in terms of what they're trying to do, building the logic so that you're actually guiding them on that path to value becomes really, really critical. And then we like to build in some throttling and things in the background just to make sure it's not too much and it's not overwhelming at the same time. So it's finding that balance of content, and then giving them those self-serve capabilities such as knowledge bots and things like that they can, serve up more information and training on their own.
Very nice. I love that you brought up this idea of not just throwing all knowledge at them, but which ends up becoming sort of like finding a needle in a haystack, but really giving them what is appropriate to them, which kind of goes back to what Patrick started with, of this idea of knowing your customer and then, really sending them only what they care about. So important. Very nice. Okay, I'm going to ask I want sort of quick answers on this one. If you had an easy button right here and you could do anything you wanted to create and deliver the most incredible self-service experience for your customers, what would that look like? Patrick, let's start with you.
I don't know. I have to figure it out by Monday, and I haven't yet. So,
Ready, go.
I would say though, honestly, that if budget was no option, it would be about investing in product design to make sure the product itself is intuitive and that it's built around customer goals so that they don't need self-service, right? Self-service comes up when something's broken or not clear. So I guess that would be my fallback answer, is a product that's intuitive enough not to need self-service. If it's got to be there, which it always does, then having it, like Kellie said, in the product at the moment of need and really direct and personalized so that, again, it's as easy as possible so customers can get back to what they're trying to accomplish.
Very nice. The best help is no help needed. That's the mantra, right? Very good. Kellie, what would you say?
Yeah, so if I could hit an easy button, it would be like magical orchestration of all the different cross-functional teams that are required to really nail a digital-led experience. Like when you really start to peel back the layers of the onion, you have product, you have marketing, you have support, you have success, and getting all that communication orchestrated, I think is the most challenging piece of getting it right, quite frankly.
Awesome. Love that. Agreed. I'll take that too. Brian, same question.
To show the love for CS again, Kellie. So if I were to ask my team, they would just say, we just want to run engineering. We're good. That would be their easy button, right? It makes everything easier. But I think from our customer perspective, SafetyChain, we're a single source platform. So all of our customers are on the same code base. Being able to have them not just have personalized info, but that it's dialed into how they're configured and using the platform in some magical way would be awesome. So I think we actually can get there someday, but yeah, just that next level of personalization and relevance for their use case would be really powerful.
Right. Very nice. And personalization, of course, and orchestration really rely on data. So let's talk about data next, because there's a way we can use data to build customer trust. And there's also ways sometimes companies use data that erode trust. So how can we use data to positively impact customer trust? What should we do and what should we not do? How should we use data or not use data to improve the customer experience? Kellie, let's go to you first.
Yeah, I'll start. So I think step one is there's just so much data, right? It's how do we bring the disparate data sources across all the different platforms that different teams are using into one centralized single source of truth that packages it up so it's insightful. And I think most importantly, actionable is the way I like to think about it. What are those triggers? What are those early warning signs in terms of things that are working or not working? And then in parallel, kind of the second theme is I'm seeing a lot more product organizations really lean into rich product analytics in terms of funnel analysis and retention analysis to understand like where are users falling off in the journey. And let's go do some A/B testing, iterate and evolve until we get it right and see the results that we're looking for. So there's kind of the success side of it, but that's where that relationship between product and success comes together to use those analytics to optimize the customer experience.
Got it. Very nice. I love it. Patrick.
Yeah, my colleagues always groan when we get into the topic of like ethical and legal uses. And so this I've been running an analytics team at Citrix, and absolutely what Kelly said is spot on. It's our whole focus has been how do we consolidate data from so many different sources. The default behavior is often to collect more, store it longer, associate different disparate sets of data together. And that's great for understanding your customer, but you have to be careful, right? There's a lot of implications. I think that when it comes to building trust with your customers, being very clear on what you're collecting and how you're using it in plain English, not in legalese that no one can understand. Ensuring customers can opt out so that you don't collect their data, which is a bummer for the business, right? Because you want to know what's everybody doing, but to ensure, especially in in EMEA, that you're retaining those customers, they need the ability to opt out and delete their data and have some control over it. So it's fundamental to building a digital experience. It's fundamental to digital customer success, but great power, great responsibility. You really have to be careful with what you're collecting, how long you're keeping it, and making sure that you're only collecting things that you really need.
So true. The great power and great responsibility comment. I think about the data compliance that we have to deal with. And the reality is, this is stuff we should be thinking about even without data compliance laws, right? We should be thinking about our customers, being authentic, caring about what they care about, and they care about their data privacy, right? So, but that also, there's kind of a balancing act there, right? We talked about personalization. How do you personalize if you don't have the right data? So, when you have these consumers that are really wanting detailed personalization, yet they don't want to give you their data, that becomes a balancing act. So it's a little bit difficult. But Brian, in the manufacturing world, what do you think about data? Like what should you and should you not do? How should you and should you not use data to improve the customer experience?
Yeah, I like the term balancing act. I think inside our business, we kind of got old school and new school, right? I mean, we got a lot of folks still run by their gut, right? And then we have some really smart people using the amazing tools that you guys are building. So as a consumer, I'm grateful for those tools. So we're very data driven, but we make data informed decisions. So I think one of the things that we do, and maybe this is skirting the question a little bit, the data is the foundation, but we really rely on our talking to our customers and to our employees. And getting both, it's kind of three kids. It's kind of like there's a real story somewhere in the middle, right? You got to talk to everybody, and so I think that's usually how we get to the best outcome. Not always, but usually it's using the data to spot the trend, source an idea, but actually taking action based on some feedback. So.
Very nice. I love two things that you brought up. One is the use of anecdotal evidence for data. That's so powerful. And oftentimes one customer comment can be much more powerful than some random stat that came from, millions of different customers. So those anecdotal data are really important. So I love that. I also love that you brought employees into the discussion. So let's kind of go that way for a minute. So we, of course, our employees are the people that really drive the customer experience. If we have happy employees, we have better customer experiences for our customers, right? We know this to be true. And I know that you're passionate about what you call a help and hustle culture. And I think that relates to the employee experience a little bit. I might be stepping out of bounds a bit, but what is this and how does it really help improve the customer experience?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking. It's something we're really passionate about at SafetyChain. I think to your point, it is about our culture internally, but it's also about the customer experience. So, I think you look at the companies that are on the panel here, just amazing companies and culture. So it's not a coincidence on the people who are the thought leaders that are focusing on this. The help side is kind of three really quick pieces. I think one is customer centric. So I saw a question pop up about how do you scale empathy, right? Coming from the first one, it's recruiting. Who are you talking? Not like the people who are actually directly working with customers, or your salespeople you're hiring, or your engineers talking about the customer experience in the recruiting process. So it's about being customer centric, customer focused, which everybody on here already is. So helping customers first, helping each other, right? Having that collaborative spirit, which is important as we're all distributed. We were talking earlier about we're covering the whole world with where we're at this morning on the panel.
Yeah.
That's the norm now, right? For all of us. So you have to have that spirit of collaboration and support. And the third one that I'm probably most passionate about is the self-care, is helping yourself, right? If you can't bring your best self, you can't do your best work. So it's about taking care of each other, wellness, and making time for that, and making it, frankly, a priority within the business. The hustle side is, I think, in a lot of our DNA. So that's a little bit easier for most of us, but it's just about working smart and being really accountable. And I think when the customers see that level of effort and they see that accountability, and here's a news flash, things don't always go great. Stuff happens. But when they see you care and do all the things that the panel's been talking about, and you're putting in that effort and you're accountable and you own it, goes a long way to building the trust we've been talking about this morning. So that's how we balance those two things of trying to build a business, but also loving on the customers at the same time.
That's awesome. Kellie, Patrick, what do you guys think of that help and hustle culture?
Yeah, I think that's
sorry.
great. But no, go ahead, Kellie.
Go ahead, Patrick.
I was just going to say, I think it's great. Traditional support mindset is very transactional. Like, they are helping customers all day long, but in a very transactional mindset. And traditionally, a lot of support metrics all reinforce that very transactional mindset, like average speed of answer and time to close. And I think the culture that we're talking about is more in customer success in general, right? And as we move to SaaS and subscription models for more and more businesses, you've got to be a broader focus on helping your fellow employees and helping the customers and achieve their goals, rather than just that very transactional nature. So it's not about one conversation; it's about all of the conversations leading to the right outcome.
Yeah, and I'll kind of pile on there. First of all, Brian, I love how you've coined it, help and hustle. I may have to steal that.
Been stealing from you all morning, so we're good.
We're all stealing from each other. Yes, that's good.
But this is definitely something that we think a lot about. And quite frankly, there's even hard data that there's strong correlation between teammate success and customer success. If you're, in my analogy, obviously, if your CSMs aren't happy and they're leaving the organization, you often see that in terms of a hit with retention rates and all those things. But even at the highest level, of our organization, our motto is to be living proof that you can win in business by being human first. So that's kind of the stage that we set, with all of our customer facing conversations, that basically, like, above all else, like, we're humans, and like, we're going to work through this, and we're going to have that trust, similar to what we started about. And that's been something that we do truly stick to, and we always come back to, even, when hard conversations present themselves.
Love it.
That's so compelling. I kind of got the chills. Like, that made me like, oh, I love that. And I saw Brian react too.
Let's go. Let's go to work.
Go. That's right. Get to the hustle.
That's right.
All right. Very nice. So before we wrap up, I want to ask some of the questions that are coming in from our audience. We've got a few questions here. So John asks, how do you ingrain the culture of trust within your organization so all employees understand their role? Who wants to take that first?
I can start. I think I mentioned it briefly. For us, it's all about it starts with recruiting. I mean, it is front and center, and we have a pretty rigorous process. It's now referred to internally as the gauntlet, because we really care about people who care. So I think recruiting is a big one, and it's got to come top down. I think one of the things I'm most proud of, we came out of our board meeting last month. I hope it's okay to share this. And my director of customer success said, you know what? I felt like I was the star student. And it was because it matters to the business, to the board, to our investors, customer success. So I think it's got to come from the top down, and it's got to come from the people you bring in.
Yeah, I love that. I think the other thing that we touch on a lot is just vulnerability. And to your point, Brian, that definitely starts at the top down, showing that it's okay to fail fast sometimes. And we all have failures and we're going to learn from it. And we all have little quirks, both professionally and personally. And then I think the other side of it's just expectation setting with your team. So like, I think about customer success, like a lot of what we do is like getting ahead of risk. Right. So like very often, like you have to kind of train that mental model of it's okay to proactively flag risk. It's not a negative sign that you're not doing a good job. Quite frankly, it's actually the opposite. This is how we get ahead of these things and have true positive business impact. So breaking down some of those barriers and letting them know like this is okay. And quite frankly, like this is how we get better as an organization, to challenge one another, to accept failures, learn from it, and keep going.
I love that. Just to add on to this, how do you guys see feedback? Feedback, and I'm not talking about customer feedback. I'm talking about how do you give feedback to within your organization, to your employees, to your CSMs, to your dev team in a way that really leaves them understanding what they need to change without demoralizing them. Because I see that happen in big organizations, especially, right? It becomes all about you did this wrong, you did this bad, yeah, you failed, blah, blah, blah. And we all say we like to be able to fail, but how do you do that elegantly, I guess?
That's a great question, and kind of beating on that empathy drum, but obviously you need to empathize with your employees. A simple one is to take the sandwich approach, right? You tell the good thing, the critical feedback, and then the good thing at the other end of the sandwich. I think being direct and honest, people appreciate that. It can sometimes be difficult to give people negative feedback, but when you couch it in that context of this is helping us both understand and grow, it's not about you personally. It's about how can we better achieve things together. I find that people really appreciate that, and getting the direct, honest feedback. I mean, it helps, right? And if your employee's not receptive to direct, honest feedback, then it goes back to recruiting, right? And to make sure you're recruiting the right people.
Right.
Yes.
And I just wanted to comment, Brian, the approach that I've learned from my managers at Citrix is 100% yes or it's a no. And that's a really difficult recruiting approach, but either the person is 100% yes, they are going to fit, or it's a no. Otherwise, you spend a lot of time trying to correct behavior and redirect that's taken away from, helping your customers achieve their goals.
So awesome. I dig it.
That's an interesting approach, and it makes me think whether there's some potential odds with diversity and inclusion in that. So I would almost question that approach, but I think it's worth discussing what that means, right? Like 100% yes means they fit these skill sets, they fit this sort of attitude, but you want to make sure that you're not sort of driving a very singular tunnel of the type of people that
you don't want to hire all the same types of people. Absolutely. And a diversity of perspectives is super important. This can turn into a recruiting webinar instead, but yeah, absolutely. That you don't want to get tunnel vision. You want to make sure that people are bringing different perspectives. It's not one person making the decision, but that confidence that you're hiring someone that has the right skill set and mindset and capability to do the job is super important.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think maybe our next panel is going to have to be on recruiting high performers or something. Okay, I have another couple questions that I want to get through. So Maliki asks a question specifically for Kellie, but I think others might be able to dive into it as well. How do you get all your staff behind and committed to the values you embody as a company?
Yeah, I think Brian kind of touched on this a little bit, but I do firmly believe like it starts at the very top. So like our CEO, like every almost huddle we have, every all hands, like values is like the framework that everything maps to. Our one-page strategic plans, it's front and center. So you have to come back to it time and time again. So it's not a point in time type of conversation, but it's truly weaved through every little thing that that the company is doing. So it starts there, then obviously needs to cascade down to all levels of your organization and being reinforced through not only language, but behavior. Like, are you actually living those values yourself? Are you demonstrating those human first capabilities? So interestingly enough, like our C-suite, their 360 reviews are all based on values. Like that's what it's packaged back to, and that's shared globally within our organization. So I think there's no better way to do it than to walk the walk. That would be my answer.
Very interesting. So your C-suite does a 360 review and the results are shared throughout your organization, all based on
high level
how
themes,
they adhere to values. Oh,
yes.
I love that.
Yes.
That's incredible. Very nice.
Yeah.
Brian or Patrick, do you guys have anything to add to that?
I really appreciate what Kellie was saying there. And I think there's a lot of truth. I think some of you might be thinking, well, that's great, but the leadership that, Gainsight is very, I mean, it's different. It is amazing, right? So maybe my feedback here would be, if you don't have that at the top, it's also about, you see this in HR a lot too, where you need to create that seat at the table. And I think the tools that we're talking about here enable you to make the business case that customer success matters. Here's why, and here's how it can make a positive impact. So it's like building a business case for the impact you want to make in the organization. So it may take a little bit of work and some visibility, but now you have the tools to show some of the results that we've been talking about internally as well. So it is possible if it's not coming from the top down. They just may need some education, or, it's a culture shift a little bit too, for sure.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's important to keep in mind that this is a panel about customer love, and here we're talking about employees. But as we've discussed, it's super, super important because these are the employees that are going out and creating stuff that is customer facing, or they are customer facing. So sure. I think that adding into the feedback that we talked about, using your values in there, here's how you're adhering to your values, hiring for values, promoting for values. But I think at the core of it is, your values have to include something about customer experience, customer success, customer love, right? They have to have a direction there. So the values of the company have to really focus on that and be authentic, going back to the point that you guys made earlier. All right, very good. Another question. What are the panelists' thoughts on branding a company's customer experience and tying a few WIFMs, what's in it for me, as customer attributes to it? Or is it just CX, or is the CX just part of being a customer of the company? So he specifically says, this is Carlos, Kellie, what % of Gainsight customers brand their programs?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I don't know that I have a hard stat like off the cuff, but I'll share with you this. It's interesting too. I don't know if folks on the line have read the recent publication from TSIA in terms of State of Customer Success 2021. One of the biggest things that's showing up right now is kind of this bifurcation of customer success and customer experience starting to live as like its distinct kind of function, if you will, with its own charter. So I don't have like an exact number in terms of our customer base, but I can share with you, like even a year and a half ago at Gainsight, we now have a VP of customer experience, and then I'm the VP of customer success. And I think the key differentiator is the VP of customer experience. That's often even like much more of a cross-functional type of role where they're working with product and all these different teams, and a lot of NPS, CSAT, those types of things then become the metrics that they're responsible for. The interesting thing will be over time, what does that evolution continue to look like? Does CS operations start to roll under CX versus CS? So we'll have to wait and see. We can make some big bets on the line, but that's just the general shift that we're seeing, is both of those roles showing up within organizations.
And at Citrix, we recently moved what was customer success out of sales into its own C-level position. That's now called customer experience, and then customer success rolls into customer experience. So similar, right? Getting that focus, really tight focus on the experience, so that we're driving, adoption and renewals because our customers are getting value from the product.
Right. That's really interesting. And it is such a funny thing when my title is VP of Customer Experience and people say, what do you do? And I'm like, what don't I do? Right? Like I kind of work with everyone. Do you work in marketing? Yeah. Do you work in customer success? Yeah. Do you work with product? Yeah, I do, but I do see what you're saying. A lot of times the customer success teams are moving under customer experience, which makes sense. So this is somewhat related to another question we got, and that is specifically on it relating to onboarding. So when a customer just becomes a customer and you're onboarding them into your software, onboarding is an area that's still a lot of companies haven't quite got right. What aspects of the onboarding experience do you think companies could invest in to show the caring and trust that we're talking about? That's a good question.
That is a great question.
Does anyone have an answer?
I'll start in the sense that this has been a struggle for us. We're enterprise SaaS. Our typical deployment is 90 days, but can go 6 months, a year, longer with really large multi-facility rollouts. I will say that the win, and this credit to customer success, just getting creative. One was listening and figuring out what they really need. And what ended up becoming, we were overthinking it. It was simple curriculum. It was kind of like SafetyChain 101. And it was the stuff that, and I know all of you are nodding like, yeah, dude, we say that stuff every day to every customer. We finally just packaged it. It's the stuff that keeps coming in. So small company, startup, but we were just getting in our own way a little bit, just overthinking it. And now everyone's raving about it. And we're like, wow, we should productize this. And it's crazy. So start simple worked for us. We're getting there, but long way to go for sure to get better.
Nice.
Yeah,
Give them the
Brian,
knowledge.
I was gonna say education as well. So making sure that the customer understands what they need to do to be successful, and then providing materials, I would say for free, because it's really about getting them to renewal rather than making like an add-on sale with education in my mind. But I think that component of knowledge management and getting customers set up for success, so they know how to plan, they know how to do their pilot, they know what they need to prepare for rollout. Really important, because what we found at Citrix, that initial onboarding success is a huge predictor for whether they are going to reach meaningful use and have long-term value with the product.
Very nice. I love that you both went to knowledge and self-service, since we've spent a lot of time talking about that. That's awesome. All right, next question. How do you recommend viewing and analyzing content data from multiple locales that takes into account sensitivity to the local cultures and their differences? There's a lot packed into that question. I have many answers for this that I can reach out to. This is from Allison. I can reach out to Allison after, but what are your thoughts? Patrick, this is kind of your realm.
Yeah, I was afraid you were going to point at me for that one.
I know, you were afraid. You were looking down.
Yeah, measuring content effectiveness is hard. Like, you've got all the traditional, views and clicks and video plays and that kind of stuff. And you can look at all of that by language and by country. And we've done that often at Citrix. It's interesting, for our knowledge base, we don't translate it. And people ask why don't you translate it? The only thing we do is that the engineers in Japan publish natively in Japanese. And the reason we don't translate is because of what we find is that whenever you look by country, our customers have their browsers set to English. So they are looking at English content, whether it's on our site or others. And then, of course, we talk to customers and they're like, well, we use the product in English, we use the documentation in English, so we want to use the KB in English so that everything matches. So you have those consumption analytics, but they don't always tell the full story. So we will also look at deflection, right? Are we able to answer the person's question? We look more broadly at self-service success, like, are people who are browsing generally finding what they need? Looking at search queries and breaking all that down by geo and language helps us get a more complete picture. But it is challenging, and it's typically a lot of data. And I think there are two problems with it. You don't always know the person's intent when they arrived. So you don't know exactly what they were trying to accomplish. And often the last signal is that they left. So they're not always going to tell you, yes, I solved my problem. And those challenges become, you've got to kind of paint the picture through all these different associations of data. And it's definitely a tough one to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. So people might not know I was I was a global content manager before coming to Zoomin. And I can say having faced the same challenges that you are facing, I worked at Amazon and we translated to 100+ language locale pairs. I mean, it was an insane amount of translation. And in looking at the data, you're right. There are some countries where people want their native language, and there are other countries where they'll trust English because they know that you speak English over a translated version of English. And so creating really trustworthy content in another language can be extremely challenging. So I totally get that. And we also at Zoomin, we have a content analytics dashboard that specifically points out what people were searching for that they didn't find, which is a nuance on what are they searching for, maybe that they did find. But it's really interesting to see what they're searching for that they're not finding, because that actually tells you where you're missing something in a certain language or something about a certain product or a specific topic in your taxonomy is missing. So anyway, Allison, we'll follow up with you on that. Great question. We have just a few minutes to go, and I want to get as many of these questions answered as possible. Okay, Raksha asks, how can we work towards getting the tech/product team to prioritize customer success projects? And then he puts in parentheses, ultimately it's for the customers, over certain feature building activities in a very small organization.
Well, it
What do you
affects
guys
big
think?
organizations too. That's not that problem.
Yeah, that's everywhere, right?
Yeah.
You guys don't have an endless engineering roadmap?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any ideas?
I would just say quickly, and then Brian, then you can go, is that there's always going to be that tension between sales driving new features, right? And then identifying adoption blockers or persistent, case volume issues that need to be fixed for existing customers. So at Citrix, we have a supportability team that tries to bring together all of those views. What is blocking adoption, what's blocking sales, and what are the big case volume drivers? And then look for commonalities that they can prioritize with the product team and get on the roadmap. But it is always a balancing act.
Yeah. Make me
Nice.
feel better, Patrick. The big companies have the same challenge. We get so jealous. We should add more engineers, right?
Yeah.
Two things. I'm trying to think of something tactical that someone could use. One thing that was brilliant, and this actually came from sales. We created a solution review board, and it's cross-functional, includes everybody. So this is to talk about problems we're hearing in the field pre-sales, but also customer experience. So everyone's got a voice in there, including customer success and support. That's been a really great forum because the topics, sometimes you don't know where they should land. And that's a great session we do bi-weekly. The other thing is, again, it's just simple stuff. We just created a litmus test, right? So we have a way of tracking all the enhancement requests and all of that. And it's got to meet a litmus test for it to even get into the conversation. And if everyone agrees on what that is, it eliminates some of the arm wrestling a little bit. So those are two things that have helped filter, I think, because that's important. There's a lot of noise. And that might help you prioritize a little bit.
Yeah, I can chime in real quick. I'll just add one quick thing on the top. So I think it's somewhat similar to the litmus test possibly that you're referencing, Brian, but I think there's a difference between just nice to have enhancement requests, right? And must have like product risks is what we call them. So we've operationalized like a product risk process, obviously in Gainsight, but there's certain criteria of like what's the request, like what piece of functionality is it, but most importantly, like what's the business impact associated if you don't go do this. So it's more of a matter of like reprioritizing R&D efforts versus just like getting it into the product roadmap. And I think that those two things need to be handled a bit differently.
Yeah, interesting. And that's a bit related to another question that came in, and we're running a little bit shorter on time. So I'm going to have you take a look at the Q&A. It's specifically for you, Kellie. Going back to your mentioning of operationalizing outcomes, can you elaborate on how it's tracked and acted upon? That could be a whole nother webinar, I think.
I know, it could be a whole nother webinar.
So if you wouldn't mind following up with her, that would be awesome.
Sure.
Okay, so what I want to move on to one last thing, just to wrap up really quickly. If you what's the one thing that you want our audience today to take away from this discussion? So think back over all of the great stuff we discussed. And if they only remember one thing from each of you, what should that be? So who wants to go first? Who's looking away? Brian, you're first.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'll go. I think like if I were to summarize it, just continue to challenge yourself to take an outside in perspective versus an inside out perspective. I think it's very natural for us to gravitate like in terms of like what we need and what we're trying to do kind of to our own agendas. But if you force yourself to look in terms of like, okay, well, what's the customer trying to do? It goes back to outcomes and value and not overwhelming them. And clearly just map out those critical moments of truth, as we like to call it. I think that's a good starting point. It's just think about everything from an outside in perspective and have a way to track and measure results along the way.
Very nice. Very nice. Brian.
I'm just going to say this. Your work matters. I think the work that you do is commendable. It is difficult. It's made 10x harder this past year. It's noticed and it's appreciated both inside and outside the organization. So it's not an easy job. And what you signed up for is super mission critical to a business being successful. It's not magic. There's no shortcuts. So when you get stuck or frustrated, just know the work you're doing really does matter and makes a difference.
Very nice. Patrick.
Yeah, that one's tough to follow, but I'll say that, that I think the one takeaway for me, and I'm going to say two of them, make your customer's life easier, right? I think that's a big focus. Make it easier for them to do their jobs, and then be careful with your data on this.
Very nice. Love it. Very good. All right. 3 fabulous takeaways. Big thanks to all 3 of you. Patrick, congrats again and good luck in your new journey. That's so awesome. And Brian and Kelly, thank you for coming. We really had fun. I want to just wrap this up. We have only a couple minutes left and I have to get a few things out. So the first is Zoomin will be hosting an invitation-only executive roundtable for customer success and customer experience executives in March. So keep an eye out for your email to get a request or to request an invitation to that. We'd love to see you there. And just really amazing to hear all of the panelists' ideas. I also want to thank the audience for tuning in. Be sure to connect with me and our panelists on LinkedIn. Do you guys have really quickly a place where you prefer your customers to connect with you, Kelly?
Yeah, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, or you can also reach out to me via email. It's just kcapote@gainsight.com.
Very nice. Patrick?
Yeah, LinkedIn is great. It's super easy.
Perfect.
I'm on there all the time.
And you'll have a new email next week, so it's
Right,
probably the best way. Very nice. Brian?
LinkedIn as well, or emails bsharp@safetychain.com. Appreciate everyone being here.
Beautiful. And I am on LinkedIn as well, Megan Gilhooly. You can find me at megan.gilhooly@zoominsoftware.com. Definitely reach out. We want to hear your stories. I know I think I'm speaking for everyone. We want to hear what you learned, how this changed your world. Be sure also to check out Gainsight and Zoomin as you're building these amazing customer experiences. And again, thank you to everybody for your involvement. Great to see you, and we'll see you later.
Excellent. Thanks, everybody.
Everyone.
Everybody, bye-bye.
Bye.